Hey there, welcome to today's show. My name is Jimmy Cadillo. Welcome to the YouTube channel. Welcome to this week's video, and I hope that you are having as blessed a day as I am having. The good Lord upstairs gave us an opportunity to wake up today, so we are certainly going to make the most of it today. So today what I want to talk about is something that I don't think about often, right? Like, you know, when you are a dad at 17 and a dad again at 18, and really to be honest with you, the first 10 years of me being a dad was kind of a blur, right? It almost seems like it happened so fast and everything was just coming at a million miles a minute that I don't really get a chance to really sit down and really reflect, because the reality is that when you have kids, a lot of times you don't have time to reflect, right? Like there's needs, right? There's things that they need. They need clothes, they need to eat, they need security, they need a roof over their head, right? Like they need diapers, they need all these things, right? So a lot of times when you're a young dad, you really don't have time to reflect. But I was talking to my producer, and we were just talking about some of the things and some of the challenges that I had gone through being a dad at 17, dropping out of high school. If you guys have seen my other video, I did not finish my junior year in high school. So he was just asking me like, hey man, what was that like? Because he doesn't have any kids. So he's like, there's just no way I can give that perspective. You know, what was that like? And then he's the one that actually asked me the question off camera, by the way. And we just thought that, hey, let's make a video about it, because I think it's something that might help some of you young fathers that are possibly going through the same thing. And again, I'm almost 50 now, so what I talk about being a young dad is through experience, right? It's not something that I learned from somebody else. It's not something that someone else told me. Everything that I talk about on this channel is going to always be based on the experiences that I have had in my lifetime specifically, and how I can take some of those things and then showcase them to you and talk about them. And then hopefully if somebody out there is going through some of the same things, that hopefully you guys find some value, and hopefully I've said something that has made your life a little bit easier, or said something that has given you maybe a bit different perspective and maybe helped you out with some of the situations that you guys are going through. So anyway, so great. What did he ask me? What question did he ask me? Here's the question that he asked me. He says, at 17, you again dropped out of high school, didn't even finish your junior year. He says, so I gotta imagine, right? The question had to have been asked, right? So like, what is the best advice someone gave you as a teen dad, and what is the worst advice that somebody gave you as a teen dad? And I never really thought about it, actually, to be honest with you. I never really stopped long enough to really, again, sit down and reflect and really ask myself and put myself back into that place to say, hey, these are the things that I went through, or these were the questions that were asked of me back then. And I never really thought about really what the answer to those things are until really he asked me. So he kind of caught me off guard, and I'm like, that's a pretty deep question. We should probably turn on the camera and talk about it. And again, just like every video that I've put up so far, this is unscripted, right? So there is no script. This is me literally talking about it live on camera for the very first time. This is something that I didn't even talk to him off camera about. I said, hey, whatever my thoughts are going to be, I want it to be captured live as I do it. I don't want it to be scripted. So turn on the camera. Let's just talk about it. Awesome. I'll start with the easy one. And I mean easy, not in a good way. I mean easy in a bad way. What is the worst advice that I got from everybody, by the way, from multiple people, when everybody found out that I was going to be a dad at 17 and they found out that my girlfriend was pregnant? And I got this advice from multiple people. I got this advice from my girlfriend, later on my wife's parents. I'm going to be honest, I got this advice from my parents. I got this advice from my best friend. I got this advice from other friends. I got this advice from some of my teachers, because this is right before I dropped out of high school and stopped going to school. But this is the advice that I got. And it's kind of a two-part kind of answer here, because I'm going to give you the top two worst advices that I got. Because I believe these things, they were literally like almost even Steven, right? Like I got this advice multiple times from multiple people. And the two worst things that I was told when they found out that my girlfriend was pregnant was, hey, you should convince her to have an abortion. Like that's the one of the worst advice that I got. And then right even to that, the other worst advice that I got besides, hey, you should have an abortion, then the other one was, hey, you should break up with your girlfriend, and you should essentially bounce, right? Like you should just leave. That is the advice that I got. So let me get something straight. Either I need to get an abortion, kill the baby, or I need to, I hate to say it, but, and again, if you've seen some of my other videos, I need to do to some degree what my dad did, and I need to be an absent father, and I need to not be there for this baby that, by the way, I was fully responsible for, because nobody forced me to have unprotected intercourse with my girlfriend at that time. So that was certainly my responsibility. So those are the two worst advices that I got. So I'll break those down before I go into the best advice I got as a young father from somebody. So number one, there's no going back, right, from an abortion. There just isn't, right? And right now, when I get to talk to my son, who's now 30, by the way, he'll be 31 coming up here. But I get to talk to my son now, and he's 30, and he's a good young man, and he's a husband in himself and a father himself, and he's given me an amazing grandson, my youngest grandson. I cannot possibly imagine a life where I don't get to talk to him, and he's not here. As a matter of fact, I'll even go a step above, right? I've told my son this. Every one of my kids has obviously meant something to me, but every one of my kids has really layered me and added something to my life beyond that they're your kids and beyond that you love them and all of that. I can literally talk about every one of my children, and every one of them has provided me something a little bit different. Same type of love, same amazing love, same all of that. But every one of them has provided me something a little bit different. My first son, who's again over 30 now, he saved my life. And what I mean by he saved my life is not that I was a horrible kid, but the reality is that I was in a place where I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And I know 17 is still young, but nonetheless, I had no clue as to what I wanted to do, whether I wanted to continue to go to school, whether I wanted to take on a trade, whether I wanted to, possibly do my own thing. Like, I had absolutely no idea as to what I wanted to do. He saved my life by giving me purpose at a young age. When you are 17 and you're about to have a kid, like, you very clearly and quickly understand that unfortunately and fortunately, it is no longer about you. Right? Like, period. It just isn't, right? Like, being a parent is one of the most selfless things that you have to do, because it really does require for you to give up or give away some of your personal feeling. Because personally, I know this is a tough one for some people to hear, but personally, the baby doesn't care about your feelings. Not at that age, right? When they're a baby, they don't care about your feelings. They don't understand that yet, right? They have to eat. They need a roof over their head. They need diapers, they need clothes, they need security, they need all of those things, right? They need you to be a dad. So I can't possibly imagine life without him. And what he did is he gave me purpose at a very young age, right? I went in, again, to the hospital. I went in a boy, left a man, if you've seen the other video. When I left the hospital, I had a very clear idea of what my purpose was at that time. And my purpose was, there's no way that I can fail him as a dad. When he's 12, 13, 14, 15, I cannot possibly have him have conversations with his teenage friends where they say, hey, what does your dad do for a living? Oh, he drives a forklift, right? Or he has a dead-end job at a warehouse or something like that. Like, I could not possibly imagine life for him if he ever got to that point. So I walked out of that hospital with very clear purpose on the fact that I could not be what my dad was to me, period, right? I had to set a better example, and in order to do that, I had to better myself, and that's when I really got into reading books and some of the things that I've done that subsequently have really catapulted me to the life that I've been able to build and the businesses that I've been able to build up to this point. So anyway, so that is kind of how that whole thing played out. And again, if I would have essentially, had, killed the baby, right? If I would have had I don't even know if we're allowed to say abortion, but if we would have done that, right? I wouldn't be able to do that, and I would not have had purpose the way I've had purpose. And then obviously the second part of that equation was, hey, why don't you bounce? Well, again, if you've seen my other videos, I grew up without my dad for the most part. I was determined once I knew she was pregnant that I was gonna do everything in my power to not do to him what my dad did to me, period. I knew it was gonna be hard. I knew that I had a basically monumental mountain to climb. I was scared. I didn't know crap about being a dad because, again, I didn't have an example of what to follow. But the one thing, so I had tons of uncertainties. Like literally everything was an uncertainty, right? Like I wasn't making money at the time. Like I can go on and on and on. But I had tons of uncertainties. However, I had one certainty. I knew one thing like 100% clearly and for sure. I did not want my son to grow up without his dad like I grew up without my, period. I knew that certain. And because of that certainty, it drove me and motivated me, and more importantly, it gave me the discipline that I needed, because the discipline that I developed wasn't necessarily for me, although it was me. Really, the way that I looked at it, and the reason it was such an easy decision to develop discipline, is because the way that I felt is I was developing discipline for my son, and the way he was going to grow up, and what I was going to make an example of, and how he was going to view me, so that when he grows up, I would hopefully break the cycle of like fatherless Cadillos, right? So that was the thought process then. So he gave me purpose, which then made me discipline, which then made sure that, again, I was not going to continue that cycle of just growing up without a dad, because that was something that I grew up with and I didn't want him to go through that. So anyway, so that is the worst advice that I got as a father at 17 years old, that I thankfully, with all God, Lord praise, that I'm happy that I obviously did not follow, because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that. Great. So now, what is the best advice that I got? Well, again, my dad wasn't around, but here's the best advice that I got. And I got this advice from one of my friend's dad, who was a very, very good dad, by the way. I always remember not necessarily being jealous, but always asking myself, like every time I went to my buddy's house, like his dad was always like his dad taught him how to work on cars. His dad was there when he shaved for the first time. I know it sounds super stupid, but I never got that, right? Like I never, like my dad didn't teach me how to shave. My dad didn't teach me how to put a tie on. My dad didn't teach me how to really kind of work on cars, to be honest with you. My dad didn't teach me anything about, fashion, if that's important to you guys. Like my dad didn't teach me, any, right? And one of these days I'll make a video about my relationship with my father, because again, he does live with me and I love him to death. But I think that's something that certainly can be shared. But anyway, so he didn't teach me any of those things. So, but I always remember going to my buddy's house and thinking to myself, like, my God, like your dad is always like, you're always with him, you're working on cars, like you do this, and he's just teaching you everything that he knows, right? And I always remember being so fascinated, like every time he'd be with his dad, like I was almost like the third wheel that I was trying to like wedge my way in, right? I remember like always like inching my way towards a conversation, right? Like I was like another kid that he had, and trying to like be super attentive to what he was saying. I never understood that at that age, right? Like I'm 13, 14, 15, 16, right? I never understood that I was literally thirsty for just dad knowledge at that time, right? I yearned for dad knowledge. I didn't know what that was, but that's literally what that was. So anyway, so I remember talking to him after, before my son was born, and I remember him specifically telling me, I said, hey, what, because I asked him, and I didn't quite ask him like, hey, can you give me some advice? All I said was, he says, hey, I heard your girlfriend's pregnant. I said, yeah. And the first thing he asked me obviously was, hey, is she okay? It's the first thing he asked me. And the second thing he asked me is, hey, what do your parents think about it? And then obviously I told him, hey, this is the advice that they gave me, which is, goes back to the one of the two worst advices that I got. But I remember saying, I didn't particularly ask him for his advice, but I remember him saying something to the effect of, hey, do you mind if I say something, tell you something? I said, yes. And I remember him saying to me, he's like, look, you're going to get all sorts of telling you also, right? Like you're going to get people telling you do this, to do that, this advice, that advice. Like you're going to get people telling you also. And those are all good. I'm not telling you not to listen to any of those. I'm not telling you to close yourself off to those. He says, I'm not telling you not to. He says, but if I can give you one word of advice about being a good dad. And I said, okay, fair enough. What is it? He's like, there's a misconception. So I'm not going to take credit for what I'm going to tell you right now. I'm going to give him credit. And God forsake, I don't even remember his name now. That's probably my old age. I'm almost 50 now, but I'll tell you what he told me. He says, there's a misconception that love is everything you need. Everyone's going to tell you, just love your kid. Just love your baby, love your child. And love is enough. He says, I know it's controversial for me to say this, but love is not enough. Anyone anyone that tells you that love is enough to care for a child, love is not. Everybody, for the most part, loves their kids when they first have them. Yet there's tons of parents that aren't involved. There's tons of dads that leave. There's tons of moms that leave. There's tons of people that don't do the things. He's like, I'm gonna give you a word that's a little bit harder to swallow, and that most people unfortunately struggle with, especially as young fathers. He's like, it's not love that your child, or that you're, at this point that everybody knew was a boy. They're like, it's not love that you're, if you want to be a good father, there's really two things that you need. So again, back to the bad advice, the good advice is also a two-part answer. He's like, here's what you're gonna, okay? You're gonna need present, period. You're gonna need to be present. You're gonna need to be involved. You can't be a good dad if you are not. And then number two, you need to be able to sacrifice. And you need to be able to sacrifice the thing that you want. You need to be able to sacrifice the things that make you feel good. You need to be able to sacrifice the thing that you think you deserve, because your young baby doesn't care about them, and he shouldn't. It's not his job. It is your job. It is your job to make. He says, I know tons of parents that love their children, and I see them make zero sacrifices, or the sacrifice that are needed to make in order for you to be a good parent. Yet they think that if they just say, hey, well, I love my son and I love my daughter, they think that it makes it okay. Yet they make zero of the sacrifices that are needed in order for you to actually show that you love your child. So it's not love that you need, sacrifice, and you need, right? So that is the best advice I ever got as a dad at 17. And that is the worst advice for the dad as a dad that I got before I had my son at 7. Hopefully these two things will add something if you are going through it, if your girlfriend is pregnant, fiance is pregnant, if you're someone in high school and you just found out that you got somebody pregnant. Hopefully some of the stuff that I shared is going to resonate with you. Hopefully it's something that's going to add some value to you. And again, this is unscripted. This is something that just came up. He asked me and I said, turn on the camera and I'll talk about it. So I apologize if I went in rambles just a little bit, but I had to literally put myself back at 17 years old in order to remember what that felt like and what advice I got at that time. But anyways, with that being said, the one thing that I want to do is I always want you to remember that God loves you. But remember, even though God loves you, okay, the Lord is your guide. He's definitely not your ride, right? It is not the Lord's job to do the work for you. It is the Lord's job and God's job to guide you. It is your job to create your own ride. So remember, the God and the Lord that we love, He is your guide. He is definitely not your ride. Do the work. Be willing to do the work. Be willing to get dirty, and be willing to do the things that you need in order for you to become the person, the man, the woman that you want to become every day, consistently, without fail. Anyways, with that being said, I appreciate you guys. Thank you for your time today. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Peace.